As we mentioned a couple of days ago, Maimonides identifies what Messiah is supposed to do. And the question is, what is the kind of character that we should look for when we try to identify the real Messiah? The answer is really very simple. Maimonides says that the Melech HaMoshiach, the King Messiah, will restore the Davidic dynasty to its original status. Messiah doesn't do anything new. He doesn't need to do miracles and wonders and split open the rocks and make the water flow. Messiah doesn't need to go ahead and get us to transport ourselves through space and to have mental telepathy. Nor does he have to be a miracle worker. Messiah does one thing. He has to be like King David. What was the trait that King David excelled in more than anyone else? The answer is, in two seemingly opposite matters, King David was greater than anyone. Number one, King David was totally devoted to whatever was under his authority, whether it was his flock or his people. He was totally absorbed with doing whatever he could to protect them. Not only did he care for them, but he put his life on the line to protect them. Number two, in that process, King David had no fear of any creature or any man. King David feared only God. So you might say, well, Moses was a great shepherd. He's called the faithful shepherd. And Moses was fearless. He stood before King Pharaoh and the great kings, Sichon and Og, and defeated them. So why isn't Moses like King David? And the answer may shock you. Moses was the greatest of all Jews, the most perfect of all men. But when it came to courage, when it came to not having fear for any creature or man, King David excelled over even Moses. And therefore his devotion to his flock was even greater than that of Moses. Yes, Moses gave his whole life for the Jewish people. But with the same fearlessness that David had in order to do that which was the will of God, with that same power, with that same courage, with that same boundless energy, King David used that same energy to care for the Jewish people and to make sure they had what they needed and to make sure they did what they had to do. For you see, King David never feared anyone from his youth. Moses, on the other hand, learned to be fearless. When God had Moses cast down the stick and the stick became a serpent, Moses ran away. It's a natural reaction. Nobody's blaming Moses. But that was his nature. Nature was something dangerous. You're afraid. David had no fear of any creature. And in that way, David was superior to even Moses in that particular trait. And that's the essence of a king. A king must fear only God above and must recognize that everything that happens is by God's divine will. And that's the reason why King David prayed to God, but King David never complained. He never ever said that things were not good. Yes, he prayed to God that they get better. He asked God, why do you have to do certain things? But he never was bitter about what took place, and he never was overwhelmed. Contrast that with Jesus of Nazareth. He's on the cross dying, and he asks God, why have you forsaken me? Yes, you pray to God to help you, to save you, to spare you. But in the process, when a person gives up their soul to God, the greats of Israel acknowledged that everything was from God, and if this was God's will, they sanctified God in that moment. And that's what happened with Akiva ben Yosef. Rabbi Akiva, the son of a convert, not the Messiah, not even close, but the greatest teacher in Israel for 2,000 years. Rabbi Akiva faced death fearlessly because he knew that everything was from God, and he accepted God's verdict. And in the process of being flayed to death, his skin was taken off of his body. What did he do? He said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our life force, and the Lord is one, and I shall sanctify his name." And that's the difference between a Jewish leader and a Jewish wannabe, between a real Messiah and a Messiah wannabe.